day, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to another technical summary video presented by me, Letty Janse van Vuren. Our topic for today is a nice little summary that I found on the prohibitions in the IESBA code for audits of public interest entities, PIEs. So let's go and have a look at this quickly and see where we'll be spending our time. As always, I start off with why this is important, just to put it into context for you. Going into a bit of an introduction, I'll then go and look at an overview of the publication, when it was issued, how many pages, what it consists of, and everything. And this one, I've summarized the most important aspects for you on a couple of slides. And then lastly, I'll refer you to the source and the bonus documents where I've given you the links where you can download everything. If we're looking at the pictures that I've provided, you'll know by now that I'm a picture person. So we're looking at something issued by IESBA, and it deals with a code of conduct. What in the code of conduct prohibits things to be done or things that cannot be done when you are busy with the audit of public interest entities? So there are specific prohibitions and restrictions on what the auditor can do if they are the auditor to public interest entities. Some of the abbreviations that we'll be using: IESBA, you'll see as the Ethics Standards Board. They're also called the International Ethics Board. It's the ethics side of the IFAC, right? IFAC has two legs. One is the assurance standards, and the other one is the ethics standards. Then we've got PI, as in public interest entity. NAS stands for non-assurance services. Obviously, one of the main threats to auditors of PIs, which they may or may not perform. Then looking at, when we speak about the code, we're talking about the IESBA Code of Professional Conduct, including the International Independent Standards. All right. So when they say code, they mean the Code of Professional Conduct. Why is this so important? Well, as an accountant, an auditor, an independent reviewer, we know that IESBA have issued the codes, and it's been adopted by our professional bodies. Whether you are a member of SICA or SIPA or SIBA or CIMA or ACCA or IRBA, they all adopted the IESBA code before then customizing it for their purposes or adopting it. Right. So we all need to be aware of all the publications by the various professional bodies and the standard setters, so that we can actually apply this in future. And this was a very nice little one because it's a summary. Okay. So it's very important that at all times you are aware that you can identify threats to your fundamental principles as well as to your independence. That's part and parcel of the fundamental principles of the IESBA code, is that throughout an audit, you need to always assess if there are any threats to your fundamental principles like confidentiality and integrity and things like all the fundamental principles, as well as your independence. And that's what we are talking about here, specifically with your independence. That's why the provision of non-assurance services is such a very big contentious issue for auditors. If we are the auditors, what can we do? Can we draft the financial statements? Well, no, we can't, because the Companies Act says if it's a statutory audit that we can't. Can we provide tax services? Yes, we can. But if it is a public interest entity, then we've got to think twice, because there might be prohibitions in the code. So it depends on the type of examples that they provide us with, and then it also depends on the role that we take in. If we are providing tax services, are we actually making a decision on the tax? So are we wearing the management's hat instead of them? Or are we still wearing our little "let me help you" hat? Because the little help me hat might be acceptable, whereas if we are performing management functions on behalf of management, then it's always going to be prohibited. Right. So let's just have a look at an introduction. So the code, we know, specifically prohibits the provision of certain services by auditors to their PI clients. So two important things: we are talking here about auditors that have PI clients, okay, on those audits. So this very high level summary is designed to highlight all the non-assurance services, and if I say NAS, excuse me, all to highlight all the NAS, the types of relationships, the types of interests, or the types of circumstances that should be avoided and are specifically prohibited for your PI audits. So if you are the PI auditor, then you can't do any of the others. Right. So this is a very useful reference, not only to stakeholders, but also the regulators, audit oversight bodies like IESBA, but also to audit firms and individual audit practitioners. Right. The preparers, everybody. This is a very important aspect. So the high level summary, they do say everywhere, this is not a substitute for reading the code. Now we know this, okay? I love summaries. I think more than the next person, because a summary to me is a short little place where I can find the most important aspects. But in this case, the summary refers to the actual code by having lots of footnote references, and that's why it's important. In the footnotes, there are footnotes to the relevant provisions in the code if you further need to go and understand anything. So my advice is, when you read this for the first time, read through it without going through the footnotes. So just read through it and say, okay, fine. Yeah, I understand what this is all about. But then you need to go through in detail and say, okay, so this one specifically refers to compilation of financial statements. So let me go and have a look there. Oh, well, this I definitely can't do. So that is prohibited. Right. There was another document that was issued by the IESBA staff in July 2020 when the revised NAS provisions in the code came about. They issued the staff document that has 23 questions and answers. I have given you the link here as a bonus document, so you can link to it. And I think I did actually do a previous TSV on these 23 questions as well. 23 questions that will help you with when is non-assurance services prohibited and when is it allowed, and under which circumstances is it allowed. All right. So let's go and have a quick look. The publication looks like this. This is their heading. I don't know what they did on the right-hand side there. They've got sort of their contact numbers and everything that I think just got a bit muddled. But it does have the IESBA stamp on it, and it says Summary of Prohibitions in the IESBA Code applicable to audits of public interest entities. And as you can see, it was issued by the IESBA staff in March 2024. So this is not a standard, okay? This is a summary. This is a guidance document to us. So this high-level summary specifically talks about the prohibitions in the code. Specifically, I said on the independence for audits of PIs. So if you are the auditor and you've got a public interest entity that you are auditing, well, then we are really in the realm now of let's be a little bit more careful. Basically, what this summary does is it contains lots and lots of examples that would indicate that there is a prohibited service or a prohibited situation or something that would have a red flag to say, wait, you can't just blindly do this. Evaluate the circumstances around it first and then decide whether or not it is prohibited or not. So let's go and have a look at the main prohibitions. I've just given you a quick little summary here. So just remember that this only applies to your PI clients, okay? So NAS provided by a firm that might create a self-review threat. That's what it's all about. It's all about any NAS that might create a self-review threat. There are prohibitions in relation to PI audit clients. And in the blue, I've given you the major examples here, okay? If this, especially if any of these items, if it forms part or affects the accounting records, or it affects the internal controls or the financial statements on which you have to express an opinion, then obviously there's a self-review threat, okay? You can't mark your own homework type thing. You can't be the ref and the coach. That's why there's a self-review threat. So the types of services that they include here in terms of your PI audit clients is valuation services, tax advisory and tax planning, valuation for tax purposes, providing assistance in tax dispute resolution, internal audit, IT systems, litigation support, legal advice, and corporate financial services. That's the entire list. Okay. So if this forms part of the financial statements and you're going to be expressing an opinion on it, you must know that that creates a self-review threat and that that would be prohibited. But it might still not be prohibited if you've got certain safeguards in place. You might get away with it. So you would say that you are not performing this on behalf of management. You are not doing this in a management capacity. You are not making any decisions. You are merely providing this as a non-assurance service to your client. They are the ones making the decisions. So this bullet is very important. The code prohibits the following NAS to apply given the self-review threat that's created. So specifically, they are talking here about accounting and bookkeeping services. Why? You can't do that because if you are preparing the accounting records or compiling the financial statements, that's what you're going to have to conclude on. That's what you express your opinion on. So there's a clear self-review threat, which makes this a prohibition. All right. Calculations of current and deferred tax liabilities or assets. They're saying that this would be it would not be allowed. Right. Other things, yeah, you might be able to lodge their change in directorship for them because that's not going to form part of anything. All right. But you would have to go and look at the circumstances. So there are main prohibitions, and then we've got other prohibitions. And in these other prohibitions is where they've given us examples. And I've given you the number of examples in red here. So this is for other prohibited NAS or interests or relationships where specifically you've got immediate family members working for some related entity that you are now making a decision on. So there's clear indication there that there is a threat to your independence or a threat to another in the fundamental principle. It could be as a result, remember, of the service itself, the interests that you have, relationships that are built, and circumstances between your Pi audit client and your firm, or your partners, your employees, and their immediate family members. Right. So I've divided it into 4 sections like they gave us the examples in the summary. Applicable to firms or network firms. So what is applicable to firms? Which are the ones that are applicable to individuals, so prohibited to individuals, and then applicable to firms or audit team members, and then lastly applicable to firms or audit team members or their immediate family members. Right. And as you can see, the majority would be at numbers 1 and 2, and then numbers 3 and 4 are just a little bit more specific. So this is a very, very handy summary because you can go and use this as a checklist to see whether or not you've got any non-assurance services that you provide to a NAS client. That's it. But your first port of call is going to say, are you providing these NAS services, the non-assurance services, to a Pi? All right, a Pi client. So the source and bonus documents, there's the link to the summary document that I've given you now. And you'll see the summary document, very, very nice. Okay. And then I've also given you a link to the IESBA staff Q&A that they released. Remember, this is the one in July 2022, and specifically question 9 in here will give you a lot of clarity. All right. So those are your source and bonus documents. If you have any further questions or you need more detail, remember that knowledge is power, and you can also go and follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow SA Accounting Academy on LinkedIn for our technical alerts that are published daily. I provide the content to that. It is also published on the news section on the SAAA website. Then you can also follow us on or subscribe to our YouTube channel. And on that channel, you will also find all my other TSVs that I've done. All these short little 10-15 minute summaries. Webinars on demand, as always, for all the webinars that we've done in the past. They are recorded, and you can access these at any time. Listen to them at your leisure. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is our MCLU subscription, where you can stay up to date every month on the latest changes. Right. So if you're not yet partaking in that fabulous offering, please do so. But that then, ladies and gentlemen, in a nutshell from me, is that on the executive summary, on the prohibitions in the IESBA code, on the audits of pies. I trust you enjoyed it with me. Thank you and goodbye.